Live for the World Cafe, Florence and the Machine, the title track from her new album, Everybody Scream. I'm Raina Duras, and Florence Welch is my guest today. Welcome to the World Cafe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. That is the title track, and it kind of feels like almost like a mission statement for the entire album. But I know you didn't write Everybody Scream till late in the process. You had the title, I think.
Well, so the title was one of the first things that came.
Yeah.
It basically came from really wanting something that rhymed with Florence and the Machine. Yeah. I was just like, wouldn't it be amazing if you had an album title that also rhymed with Florence and the Machine? That was also the title of the track. Like, it literally came from wanting to write like a single that rhymed with Florence and the Machine, because I just thought that would be cool.
Yeah. And I mean, screaming is kind of all over the album, either in the lyrics or like literally like wails and
yes, screams. I think it's almost, as a lyric, it's almost in every song.
Yeah.
Right?
Why do you think that was something that kept coming back?
I think I just like, yeah, I think I felt like I had this silent scream inside me as I was making it. And it was just a way to process that feeling. You know, I had this sort of like silent screaming going on inside me all the time, and so it was like a way to like let it out, you know, but in a way that like was freed me from it.
Sure.
Know?
Well,
like,
screaming is cathartic, and it can come from a place of agony, but it can also, and I think in that song you kind of feel it can be unifying.
Yes, I wanted to change. So I thought about Everybody Scream as like this everybody scream, you know, like it's very like has a lot of bravado in it and like joy almost. And I was like, what if you inverted that into just a scream of like feminine fury and frustration? And when you were like everybody scream, it was just like
yeah, it feels like it comes from a really like deep and primal place.
Yes, it is. It was like it felt like, I don't know, I think when you go through like a traumatic event, it's not necessarily loud. You know, I think I went through a traumatic event and actually it was a very silent event. You know, like when something happens to your body, you're just quite like stuck in it and you actually aren't making that much sound. So it was like, I think it was a way of processing that. I also think we are all wandering around like with enormous amount of like collective trauma in a way. You know, the pandemic really wasn't that long ago. And I think we don't talk about it, or we're not like...
Yeah, we didn't really process that.
We have not processed it. I think we haven't processed it. Everyone is just out there trying to live in this kind of like slightly deranged way.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I do feel like I also like ran at life after the pandemic, like ran back into touring, ran back into like life or trying to live and like, yeah, I wanted this sense of that if you were screaming internally, that you could like come to a place and scream externally. You know, I wanted to give that to people as well as myself.
I'm talking to Florence Welch today on World Cafe. In that song, in Everybody Scream, you sing, I get on stage, call her by her first name, tried to stay away, but I always meet her back at this place. She gives me everything. I feel no pain. Who is she? Is that your stage self? Is that the audience, the stage, the performance?
That actually came from a conversation with Mitski. She came to the studio before Everybody Scream was like fully finished. It was in demo form. It was just a list of random commands and shouts, and like there was no chorus. And she really helped kind of construct that song into what it was, you know, helped. And I think we just had to talk about what the song meant. And we had this conversation about the like level of sacrifice it sometimes feels like as a woman that you have to do to keep going in this job, you know, that potentially that your male counterparts don't have to deal with. But within that, she said something really beautiful. She was like, but the intimacy that brings you with it. And like, it is also like a kind of experience, you know, that maybe they will never know. So we're also two people who I think have a really similar attitude to work, which is like, I must do it. Why am I doing it? I must do it. It hurts so much. which is, again, like a lot of my record is like the brutality of songwriting, what you put yourself through every time you release a record, and yet you always keep coming back.
Yeah. When you go on stage, what does it give you? What is your
Well, then I
headspace like?
think you're kind of explaining it later in the song. It's like, here I can take up the whole of the sky, unfurling, becoming my full size.
Yeah.
It's that push and pull of like, kind of like the everyday happiness that I think I get from like not being seen, having a quiet life, routine, normality, contentment, and this transcendent experience. Eventually I do butt at the edges of a normal life, because there's this, I'll start making songs again and I'll be like, oh, there's this huge force inside me that needs to live. Like, I'm not meant for this world.
Right.
I'm like bigger than this building. Like, I must be free from the confines of normality. So you're kind of always wrestling with these like parts of yourself. And I think, especially because bigness and hugeness is often not allowed in women, and especially I think off stage, I shrank myself in order to survive, in order to survive the public gaze. Big, like outgoing, gregarious women were often like told they were annoying or ridiculed, or like, and I found that to be the case when I was a young woman, and it was really painful. And so I was like, okay, you don't get like this part of me, but the stage was a place where they like the kind of hugeness of my feelings was kind of celebrated, so I think I always kept going back as a space where I felt like I could be big,
Yeah.
The world turns. The world turns.
I'm talking to Florence Welch today on World Cafe. Speaking of like unconventional women and women being huge and not being allowed to do that stuff. I know that one thing that you were sort of researching when you worked on this record was witchcraft.
Yeah.
And you went to the Warburg Institute in London. I guess quickly tell us what that is for people who don't know.
So it's one of the biggest, like, it deals in like occult mysticism and symbolism. It actually has a section of the library that's organized just on esoteric principles. Like, it's not alphabetical. It's like all symbolism.
Oh, cool.
It's such a magical place. Weirdly, my mother, when she found out I was there, she was like, "It's so sweet," because I went there a lot researching my books when I was pregnant with you.
Whoa.
So she's a professor of Renaissance studies.
So you'd been there before.
So I've been there before, and I went back, and I think the imagination is this form of escape. Mythology is a form of escape. I was looking to find meaning in the experiences that I'd had. I was looking to explore forms of power, and also to like look to other women who'd kind of lived non-traditional. Like women were called witches just for owning a house.
Yeah.
It's just like, it was like, it was a sense that if you were living in outside of society, you were a threat, that you were dangerous somehow, or that you had something people wanted. And I was thinking about how I have lived in some ways a non-traditional life.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to hear you perform the song Sympathy Magic next. And there is something called sympathetic magic. And it's like it's the belief basically that you can influence something or someone by using a corresponding object that resembles it, like a voodoo doll.
Yeah.
What is the magical process happening in this song? What is sympathy magic?
So sympathetic magic, it is a sort of like, or it's also, so in medieval times, sympathetic magic, I was also looking back to a period of time where magic was just a much more real part of life, like magic and religion, kind of like a similar thing. Like you would go to a cunning woman for a spell, you would go to your priest for a prayer, but they kind of like, magic was real. And I was learning about sympathetic magic, which you would go to, someone and you would be like, I like a love spell, or I want to make a connection with this person. And sympathetic magic, I guess it's a form of like having control over someone, but it was also about making connections. So you would like whisper a spell into a piece of baking bread and then give that person. And I was thinking about songs as a kind of sympathetic magic, like I feel like that at the heart of it, songwriting is about making a connection with someone, a feeling like you can be with them or put your arms around them, or be part of their world without even being there.
Yeah.
It's also just a mishearing because they said sympathetic magic and I heard it as sympathy magic, and that was, but I also think the only good thing about going through something awful is that you can be there for the other people who went through it too. You know, so I was thinking of sympathy in terms of this kind of magic.
Yeah.
You know, sympathy magic, like that, like you can connect with people. That's the only gift in it, really, is that you can also help someone else feel better.